Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our live assembly to bring our Climate Action Week 2024 to an end. It's been so lovely working with all of you this week, and I'm really excited to be able to share all of the amazing work that you've been doing at the end of this presentation. There's so much brilliant work that you've sent in. I'm sure you're all looking forward to seeing it as well. But before we get into that, I just want to remind ourselves of all of the amazing things that we've learned this week. So we kicked off on Monday when we learned that there is a bright new world waiting for us and that we have the tools to create this world already. And the brilliant author Cindy Ford showed us that we need faster action from our world leaders to make this happen. And our voices are an important tool in telling those in power that we want this future where our homes and gardens are sustainable and they support nature. And this led on to one way that we can make our homes more sustainable is to learn from nature. And Jasper showed us how animals have homes that help them keep safe and comfortable, including wolves that live in underground dens to help keep cool. The Highland Wildlife Park have designed their own sustainable learning hub inspired by nature, built from local wood and using sheep wool as insulation to keep the building nice and warm. As well as building our homes and insulating them with sustainable materials, Nicola explained how we need to think about how our homes are heated to help them be more sustainable. We had some surprises about what makes a sustainable home, including that wood can be a sustainable building material, and some homes in Scotland are heated using waste heat from industry. When we design our homes, we also need to think about how to cope with the changes that climate change is bringing. And our Nicola explained how we can design sustainable homes in many ways, including this stilt house, which was designed to be flood resistant. We also thought about how it is important to consider our well-being when designing the inside of our homes, especially the importance of connecting to nature, even when we're indoors. As well as supporting our well-being, nature can help us cope with the changes to our weather that climate change is bringing. And Eve showed us how our gardens can help us with climate change, including installing water butts to create water gardens. Now, I've got a few quiz questions to ask you. So if you've got your whiteboards and pens ready, that would be brilliant. So we're going to have a quiz, and a big thank you to Gapminder for some of the questions used in this quiz. This is a really great resource, teachers, to test your knowledge on climate change and other sustainability topics. So for this quiz, we're going to have all of the answers at the end. So I just want you to write down your answers on your whiteboard or on your teacher's whiteboard. You don't need to share them in the chat. So question 1. Why do red squirrels build their drays high up in trees? Is it to avoid being eaten by pine martens? Is it B, to avoid being eaten by foxes? Or is it C, to stay cool in the hot weather? So just have 10 seconds now to write down which answer do you think that is? A, to avoid being eaten by pine martens, B, to avoid being eaten by foxes, or C, to stay cool in the hot weather. Okay, next question. Question 2. So currently the average temperature on planet Earth is 15 degrees. what would the average temperature on Earth be without greenhouse gases? Would it be A, minus 18 degrees? Would it be B, 6 degrees? Or would it be C, 21 degrees? So if we had no greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, what would the average temperature on Earth be? A, minus 18 degrees, B, 6 degrees, or C, 21 degrees? Okay, question 3. Of all greenhouse gas emissions from human activities, how much come from burning fossil fuels? And that's fuels like coal, oil, and gas. Is it around 25%? That's A. Is it B, which is 45%? Or is it C, around 65%? What do we think? A, 25%, B, 45%, or C, 65%? Okay. Question 4. How many of the world's 250 richest companies have set targets to cut their carbon emissions? Is it A, around 20%? Is it B, around 50%? Or is it C, around 80%? So how many of those companies have set targets? A, 20%, B, 50%, or is it C, 80%? Okay, we're now moving on to question 5. What is holding us back from solving climate change? Is it A, we don't have the technology to replace fossil fuels? Is it B, countries and companies are not prioritizing climate change enough? Or is it C, people don't care about climate change? What do we think? See my colleague Kat saying these are quite tricky questions. You're right, Kat. Yeah, they are quite tricky questions. But I'm sure we'll all be able to have a good go at them. And our final question, question 6. How can we make our existing homes more sustainable? Is it A, increase the amount of insulation in the walls, ceiling, and floor? Is it B, change our heating systems to renewable options? Or is it C, buy less stuff for our homes and get it secondhand where possible? So which of those do you think can make our existing homes more sustainable? Okay, so let's see how we did. So I'm going to go through the answers now. So for question 1, red squirrels build their drays high up in trees to avoid being eaten by pine martens. Pine martens like to eat red squirrels, and so they build their nests high up in the trees to try and get away from the pine martens where they can't go and therefore avoid being eaten by them. Question 2. If we didn't have greenhouse gases to help keep our Earth at a fairly stable temperature, then the average temperature would be much colder. It would be minus 18 degrees. And so remember, we do need some greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, but the problem we have at the moment is that we're releasing too much greenhouse gases, and that is causing our planet to get warmer and our climate to change. Okay, how did you do for question 3? Correct answer was about 65%. So one of the best ways we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions is to switch from using fossil fuels to renewable energy sources like solar and wind power. Question 4. How many of the world's 250 richest companies have set targets to cut their carbon emissions? It's actually around 80%. And that could be a bit of a surprise to you. But most companies are aware of the risks posed by climate change and are starting to do their bit to help. Now, question 5. What is holding us back from solving climate change? So even though 80% of companies have targets to cut their emissions, many of them don't go far enough and they're not hitting the targets that they have set. So it's really important that we hold our politicians and company managers to account. And that's where using our voices is one of the most effective ways to do this, as well as voting for politicians who you think are wanting to look after our environment and then buying from companies who you feel have got good sustainability. Final question, number 6. How can we make our existing homes more sustainable? Bit of a trick question, this one, because we can do all of these things to help make our homes more sustainable. We can use lots of different types of insulation like wood fiber, recycled paper and wool. We can heat our homes with different types of sources, such as a heat pump, which could be powered by renewable energy. And we can also buy secondhand items, and that reduces the emissions from manufacturing things, because we maybe won't need to make as many new things. But remember, we can also use our voices to ask and demand change. Now, you asked so many brilliant questions during this week, and we didn't have time to answer them all in the sessions. So we're going to have a go at answering some of them now. But again, because we're a bit pushed for time, because I want to share with you all of the amazing examples of the work that you've done, we're going to answer a few of the questions now, but we've also asked our speakers to answer as many questions as they can, and you can find the answers in a resource to this session that you can find on our Climate Action Week Assembly and our web page. So you can go to our web page and you will find lots of answers to all of the questions there. My colleague Nicola's just shared that in the chat. But here are some of your questions. So, would we still be alive when these changes are happening? And this was asked, I believe, of Cindy Ford. And what's really exciting is that changes are already happening. So it's already cheaper to produce green energy from things like wind and solar rather than producing energy from fossil fuels. And we are already starting to design energy efficient vehicles and sustainable cities, transport and farming systems. And responsible manufacturers are also developing materials that create far less pollution and waste. And we're learning that we can enjoy our lives more when we don't buy as much stuff. So there are already changes happening right now. Another question was, how are we going to get everyone to help and listen? Well, what you're doing this week in school is a brilliant example. You're showing that we can solve these problems, and not just by patching things up, but also by demonstrating things. You've designed some incredible houses that I've seen, and I'm going to share with you a bit later. And you've learned how we can adapt to our changing world. And it's important to realize that we can get overwhelmed by how big some of these problems seem. But when we tell and show people what the solutions are and how much better our lives can be, people are much more ready to listen to that and to help. And the final one here is, how can we make sure that everyone is doing what they need to be doing to make these changes? Well, there's almost 8 billion of us on the planet Earth, and those of us who can do even a small thing every day can make a big difference. And it's important not to worry about the things that we can't change individually, but we need to choose the things that we can. And it's really important that we work together and we collectively use our voice to ask politicians and companies to listen to what we're wanting them to do. We had a few more questions. These were about engineering our sustainable homes. One of those was, are we using sustainable forests as we are worried about chopping down trees and taking away habitats from animals? So when we're using wood for building, it's really important that that wood comes from forests that are sustainably managed, especially if we're wanting to use more wood to create our homes. And we need to ensure that our forests are able to grow back naturally. And we can do this, and we are doing this, by carefully selecting and managing our trees and forests that we use for construction. And we also need to make sure that we replant new trees to make up for the ones that we have cut down. One of the questions was, is hydropower a sustainable source of power? And this was a very straightforward one to answer. Yes, it is. Hydropower is a sustainable source of power. And that's because the source of that power just comes from water moving very quickly. And there's no greenhouse gases released from that process. So if we're able to harness the power of water moving quickly, then it is a sustainable source of power. As long as that water is flowing, we will be able to get power from it. The final question was an even trickier one, which is how many people own a sustainable home in Scotland? And the honest answer is we don't really know. One of the brilliant things about Nicola's presentation, it showed us that there can be lots of different sustainable things that you can do in lots of different types of sustainable homes. There are over 2.5 million homes in Scotland. Some will have more sustainable features than others, but everyone has an opportunity to do large or small things to try and make their home a bit more sustainable. And finally, your questions on climate-ready gardens. So some of you asked, are there any particular plants that you put in a rain garden? And generally, you want to have plants that can intercept water with their leaves. You want to have plants that can absorb lots of water with their roots and don't mind being in waterlogged soils. And there's loads of different types of plants that you can use for this. Some examples are primrose or hydrangea, iris, and also older trees, but there's many more. One question was, what plants are good for bees in our beehive? Well, bees need nectar from flowers to eat and to make into honey. So the best thing you can plant is pretty much any type of flower, particularly those with single flowers and not too many petals. Wildflowers, especially like those common in the UK, like clover, knapweed, or honeysuckle, are also really good. And the final question was, what flowers would be good to grow in raised beds? We are currently creating our own sustainable garden in school. That's really brilliant to see. And lots of flowers will grow in raised beds. Apart from the bulbs like daffodils and crocuses, we've also got geraniums, which will grow very well. Heather can do well in raised beds, as can oxeye daisies and edible flowers like nasturtiums or borage. And also holly, if you're looking for something a bit different. And remember, raised beds are great for growing some food crops like herbs, carrots, tomatoes, potatoes, and even beetroot. Just make sure you don't mix daffodils with anything that you're planning on eating. Well, as I said, you can find more answers to the questions you asked on our webpage. But what I'd like to do now is share a message with you. So we've been seeing your amazing work, and we're delighted to share with you this message from Gillian Martin, who is the Acting Cabinet Secretary for Net Zero and Energy from the Scottish Government. And she's got some brilliant things that she wants to share with you.
Good morning, everyone. As Acting Cabinet Secretary for Net Zero and Energy, I am delighted to send you this message as you come together to celebrate and reflect on Climate Action Week 2024. This week, you've been taking part in lessons and activities on how our homes and gardens could look in a climate-ready future. These activities are part of Scotland's Climate Week, and people all across Scotland have also been sharing stories of positive climate action has been taken in their communities. And stories are a really powerful tool for connecting people and inspiring action. For me, the most inspiring stories of change often come from children and young people like you, This assembly is an important opportunity for you to share some of those stories, to celebrate, to learn and inspire one another. This year also marks the 30th anniversary of the International Eco Schools programme all of you are involved with the help of Keep Scotland Beautiful. The programme builds climate literacy amongst primary and secondary school students to encourage action on the climate emergency. And yours is one of 166 schools across Scotland taking part in Scotland's Climate Week. The Scottish Government is really delighted to continue to support this work, which has engaged and inspired so many of you to take actions and raise your voices on climate change mitigation and adaptation. And as a government, we want to hear your voices. We know that you will challenge us to do more to tackle the causes and impact of the climate emergency as the voice of the next generation. Future generations deserve a more equal, just and fair future that leaves no one behind, and not only have children and young people played a significant role in keeping climate change at the top of the global agenda, but you're also going to face the greatest impacts of it over your lifetime. So that's why the Scottish Government is committed to ensure a genuine role in climate policy for all children and young people. It's crucial that you feel empowered and supported to engage each other and to hold decision makers like me in society to account on the issues that really matter to you. And finally, I want to thank Keep Scotland Beautiful for putting together this engaging and creative Climate Week programme with organisations such as the Royal Botanic Gardens in Edinburgh and the Scottish Book Trust. I also want to say a big thank you to the pupils and staff across Scotland for the amazing climate actions that you're taking in your schools and wider communities. Keep up the good work and continue to inspire others and challenge us as we work together to tackle the climate emergency.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that message from Gillian. She's obviously very impressed with all of the work that you've been doing. It's now coming to my favourite part of the presentation, where I get to share with you all of the incredible work that you've done. There's so much that I've got to show you that we will be going through at a fair rate. So please pay attention and look out for any of the work that you may have shared. Thank you so much, everyone who shared all of that brilliant work that I've just shown you. There's been so much of it, and it's been so lovely looking through all of it. And we want you to remember of all that work that you've done and all that hard work that you've put in and the fantastic things that you've been doing this week. We hope that you've learned that a sustainable future is possible, and there are lots of different things that we can do to start making it happen. From us, we'd like to say a big thank you to all of the educators, all of your teachers for engaging with us and helping you do lots of the amazing work that you've done. We would very much value any feedback that you've got. So as always, we will be sharing a feedback form in the chat for you to have a quick look at if you've got time. A big thank you as well to the pupils. So give yourselves a big round of applause. Thank you for listening to our lessons, wanting to take action on our planet, and for sharing your fantastic work. The final thing from me before I say goodbye, just to remind you of our next events. We've got a brilliant live lesson about autumn meadow sowing. So if you had questions about plants and flowers, then that could be a brilliant one for you to come along to. That's on the 2nd of October. We've also got a live lesson on dealing with disinformation, figuring out fact from fiction on the 6th of November. And we've got a live lesson with the RSPB looking about bird watching on the 15th of January. And then we've got our Spring Clean Week, the 17th to the 21st of March. If you'd like to find out more, then you can go to our website, the live lessons section of our website, to register interest. But that's all from me. Just a big thank you to all of you for taking part. It's been lovely working with you this week, and we hope that you have a good rest of your day and a lovely weekend. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you at one of our events soon.